We focused on soldering and electronics. We focused on augmented reality technologies, coding and robotics. So for me, I like to say it was hiding the vegetables in the bolognese because they think they're problem solving, but actually they're secretly learning all these things. Sometimes they see through it, and other times it's a really good way to short circuit all those stereotypes that young women have about technology and the way that they fit in with that or don't fit in, as it may be. So if you can make somebody feel more confident while learning, then how hard what they're learning is no longer an issue, or how they perceive their ability to learn that thing is no longer an issue.
Hi, Smart Community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a really great conversation with Hannah Beder. Hannah is a technology lead, educator, and New South Wales Young Woman of the Year in 2020. Hannah spends her time developing technology curriculums and education products, which promotes entrepreneurship, encourages creative expression through technology, and prepares young people for the workforce in the future. In this episode, Hannah tells us about her background in software engineering, her current work as a technology educator, and her passion for women in tech. Hannah then shares with us how she came to be a software engineer, and we discuss the importance of changing the narrative around STEM conversations so young people feel more confident in pursuing STEM careers. Hannah then shares a bit about some of the projects she's been working on before she discusses some of the factors that she sees deterring women from STEM careers, and we talk about the importance of creative flexibility in smart communities. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trends of how people are starting to discover what really matters to them and how they impact the world through their work. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for. Hello, Hannah. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. It's been a long time since we had a proper chat. I think we were just talking about it. 2020, in the height of the first COVID lockdown, I think.
That's right. Back when doing interview series was new to me and very, very normal for you still. I saw some milestones about the numbers of episodes you guys have done and all the listenership. So, I mean, I'm glad that we were brought together, but I was but a novice in the face of an expert podcaster.
Well, just to reassure you, I had never done a Instagram live before, so I had to learn that, and I felt like I was a bit of a amateur in that space. But anyway, actually, I haven't really done any more interviews on Instagram, so I'll have to do something again soon.
Yeah, that's where the kids are. Well, I should say.
They're on TikTok now, aren't they?
They've moved on, and I haven't kept up, so we're both out of touch now.
Yeah. Okay. Let's stop talking because I don't like to feel old. So, on that note, well, let's just jump straight into you. Tell us who you are and your background and what you are passionate about.
Sure. I am Hannah Beder. I was a software engineer. I am a technology educator and learning designer now. And I'm passionate about women in technology specifically and the future of work and how young people can prepare for it more generally. I've been on a bit of a windy path trying to figure out what I like doing, and what I like doing has changed over time. I used to really love coding and making really nice websites and felt a lot of fulfillment in that. But I kept teaching technology and coding on the side, computer science, education positions at the same time. And then I thought that's what I really, really like. And now I'm on to phase 3, which is education in general for people of different backgrounds, experiences, or walks of life. So making complex things simple, no matter what that thing is and no matter who it's for.
That's awesome. And, the reason I asked you to be on the podcast is not because we're just having a pre-chat, you're not adjacent to the smart community space. You are right in the smart community space, because education and tech and bringing more people into the conversation and bringing more people behind the code as well is such an important part of it. And I think, yeah, we want to talk more about that, but also people that are doing real stuff in that space as well. So that's why I was super excited to have you on the podcast. And it's been a long time coming. So yeah, keen to, I know you do a few different things, so we'll dive into that shortly. But first of all, what is a smart community to you?
To me, a smart community is one that is able to thrive together. For me, the emphasis is on the community rather than the smart in a way, because smart is an enhancement on top of something that already exists. I think people who grew up in small towns, people who are part of a specific cultural background, people who have, specific religious beliefs or other sort of things that you rally around as a community, understand that there's a difference between a community and just a group of people. So to me, the community aspect has to be there first, and then the smart goes on top. It's what enhances their ability to live a rich and meaningful life together in a place they're connected to. So that's what smart communities mean to me. It's almost like I didn't say tech at all, but yeah, that's kind of what it means to me for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm keen to, I totally agree. There's a difference between, a group of people that might, hang out or meet together for some reason, but then the community and the bonds and the ties and, the common kind of interest. And it might not be everything. It might be just one thing, but also bringing that other layer. Yeah, those two layers, and tech can help us to build that community. Data can help us make decisions, but if you don't have that community, the human connections and the social fabric, then it's neither smart nor a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know in research, like it used to be that if you wanted to market a product to people, you would align around demographics, right? Like 40-year-old mothers of two or young men who drive motorbikes or something like that. But over time, that's morphed into people who have similar experiences and needs. And that's very prevalent inside a community, people who are aligned based on the issues they face and the needs that they have. So I think that comes up a lot in smart communities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you come to be a software engineer?
I came to be a software engineer somewhat by accident. I had quite a diverse set of interests during school and would have, if anything else, gone into music. But when I looked at my subjects and spoke with some teachers, it was kind of the opinion that if you can do maths, then you should keep doing maths, because if you can't, then you can't. So if you can, then you should. And I guess I could. So I was told that engineering is sort of the real world extension of maths. And so I enrolled in an engineering degree in electrical engineering. And in the first year, you have to do a variety of subjects to get you acclimatized. And so by the time I'd finished my first year, I knew that actually it was computer science that I was very interested in. So I landed up switching over into that degree program and didn't really look back. It was hard. It was a very challenging degree. I think we don't tell people that you're not meant to know stuff when you start uni. So I felt like everybody around me was just finding it really easy. And I was kind of struggling to wrap my head around the content. But I did know after the fact, after the courses were over, after the exams had been sat, that then I could always talk about stuff to other people. I could explain concepts quite clearly. So it bolstered my confidence in that area. Maybe I don't assess well, or my pace of learning is not the same as the pace of the degree, but I certainly found that over time I became more confident, if not better, but definitely more confident in my knowledge. So that's sort of how I became a software engineer.
Awesome. Yeah, I asked that because I had a similar kind of you're good at maths, so do engineering kind of conversation. And I often think about, some of the other people that I went to school with that were really interested in, say, environment or sustainability, or, they didn't really know, but they were quite good at, I don't know, business or whatever. And whether if they had a similar conversation with somebody to say, oh, actually, have you tried engineering or anything in STEM, that they could also be very brilliant engineers. And yes, there's a level of math, of course, but actually the level is not I don't think it's as crazy as people think it is. Maybe that's me just being a math person saying like, yeah, it's fine, it's easy. It actually wasn't easy, but there's a level there where it is, you can choose your kind of own path within engineering and STEM. And I think, yeah, I want to definitely have more conversation. Well, I want to change that narrative around the engineering space, so then we can have those conversations with people and guide them into, the STEM kind of field, because it's not just about being good at math, but we need people to bring their creativity. We need people to bring their experiences and all their different types of backgrounds and things. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And, you and I probably would have fallen into it anyway without that guidance, but providing that guidance to people that might have gone a different way and, lure them in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, maths didn't exactly make me feel like I was doing well, did it? So it's all very well to say, oh yeah, good at maths, go do engineering. But like when you're there, you're like, but I'm so bad at maths. And also me being good at maths doesn't make me good at all this problem solving and teamwork and, creativity, as you say. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I wish that people sort of knew that careers are much more diverse than the courses you take at school or university. Things are very siloed, and Smart Communities is a perfect example of the nexus of many different things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we'll see more of that in the future as well, that, you won't just have an engineering degree, you might have an engineering and a data science degree, which I say because that's what I just have done, but very separately. I started off with my engineering degree, and then, I've done a master's of data science. And again, I looked around, the virtual room, it was all online, but I was just like, oh my God, I coding, right? It's like a new language, but try to learn like a new language in 2 weeks and then use it and then speak it. And it's just a bit wild. But then talking to other people who had finished and going, oh my God, am I just like not able to do this? Then once you kind of pick it up and get a handle on it, still it can take a whole subject. And fortunately, it kind of builds on each other as you go. But it is a hard one, particularly if you're different to the other people in the course as well, which we know, there's underrepresentation of women still in science and math and in computer science and that type of thing as well. You want to, you put a lot of pressure. You can put a lot of pressure, which is unnecessary, but we do, to do well and be the person, like finish the course and feel like we should be there. So I think it's a really interesting one. I think that's what we'll see more and more of, that kind of mix between, you don't have to just do one thing. You can do more than one thing, and having the education set up to be able to do that as well.
Absolutely. So
tell us about some of the projects and things you've been working on. I know you do a few different things, so give us the rundown.
The rundown. Well, something you mentioned earlier, I thought I would touch upon again, which is that you have to sort of find creative ways to engage people with technology, especially as they're learning. And one of the most rewarding things that I've done over the past 2 years since joining my current company, Creatable, is teach a creative technology syllabus to year 9 and 10 girls. It sits inside the design and technology curriculum, which usually is a lot of, depends where you go to school, but it can be anything from woodwork and metal smithing all the way through to laser cutting, 3D printing, jewelry making, fabrication, sewing, textiles, etc. So in the schools that we operate in, the students sort of arrive and they're like, why am I coding in this subject? It doesn't make any sense. But what the program aimed to do was equip young women with the tools and confidence they need to build the future. And as I'm sure you know, yes, you can work as a really, really niche sort of embedded systems engineer, or you can solve specific problems, but at a high level. And so what we were doing was encouraging the students to pick a problem they wanted to solve while learning a particular technology, and then come up with their own solution that sort of brings those things together. And we focused on soldering and electronics. We focused on augmented reality technologies, coding and robotics. So for me, I like to say it was hiding the vegetables in the bolognese, because they think they're problem solving, but actually they're secretly learning all these things. Sometimes they see through it, and other times it's a really good way to short circuit all those stereotypes that young women have about technology and the way that they fit in with that or don't fit in, as it may be. So if you can make somebody feel more confident while learning, then how hard what they're learning is no longer an issue, or how they perceive their ability to learn that thing is no longer an issue. So that was incredibly rewarding. We taught hundreds of students over the last couple of years. Creatable's been running that program since 2016 or 2017. So we're actually starting to see the return in that past students are approaching us asking if we have work experience available. They're coming to us and seeing if we are able to advise them on their decisions for what degrees to take at university. You know, when it sticks, it really sticks, which is amazing. So that's one of the projects that's been really fun to work on. Another that we have recently continued is a partnership that we have with UNICEF. So UNICEF heard what we were doing in Sydney with all these high school girls, teaching them coding and technology. And they wanted to know if we would be able to develop an engineering and entrepreneurship syllabus for the nation of Burundi. So Burundi at the time was the second poorest country in the world. It's now the poorest country in the world. And the sort of proviso behind that was if it works there, it will work anywhere for them. So what we did was created this syllabus for year 8 science that encompassed real hands-on projects as well as scientific knowledge. So we're talking, you know, thermodynamics, insulators and conductors, combustion, the water cycle, so precipitation, condensation, evaporation, all these kinds of things that they're going to need to learn anyway. But why not learn it while building an efficient wood-burning stove or a device that can clean your drinking water? So what landed up happening was that the impacts were far more outsized than we had anticipated. You know, we thought their contextual issues we were trying to solve was a lack of access to clean drinking water, massive amounts of deforestation across the nation, as well as smoke inhalation from unsafe and inefficient cooking stoves, leading to premature deaths. So, I mean, when you start at that fundamental reason, it doesn't sound all fun and games, but it's kind of crazy the community building that results as a product of that. What ended up happening was this rocket stove took off to the extent that students were going and building it for their families in other towns. There was the head of the student association walked into a friend's place and saw this stove and said, "What is this? Who made this for you?" And they said, "Your son," you know. So all these kids were helping their family and friends with these efficient wood burning stoves. And what it meant was girls didn't have to watch the fire and the food before and after school, so they could get there on time. It meant they didn't need to collect firewood after school in the dark every night. The firewood that would last for 1 week would now last for 2 to 3 weeks. So they were using less wood. Of course, there is danger associated with all of these things for young women out the house after dark. The students created a revenue generating student society where they pooled all their collective free time to do things that would make money for them to buy resources for the school. So just through this one project, we were able to really improve the livelihoods of the people in Burundi. And they've since re-engaged us we're halfway through implementing a new module, which is on innovative agricultural practices. 95% of Burundians are subsistence farmers. So really driving the change around the issues that face the current population and will continue to face these young people, help empower them to see they can solve problems that will face them in the future is an incredible outcome. So it's hard to understate how excited I was to hear about the success of the project. But from a nerdy perspective, I wrote a textbook and it was really fun. So that was cool too.
That's so awesome. And I love that because, again, that's what Smart Community Project is about, right? What are the pain points that we're solving? And some of those are really big and some are small. And, you know, this is a really big issue. But then using technology and, you know, low tech, like it doesn't have to be a new widget or whatever, but maybe that fits in, but maybe it doesn't. And then using the community, engaging with the community, understanding what works and what doesn't work for them, and then continuing to make it sustainable. and sustainable in the sense of less wood, obviously the environmental perspective, less smoke inhalation from a society health perspective, but economically as well, that they were able to then generate revenue, or just continue to make it sustainable so then somebody can continue to make it. And also thinking about from a local perspective, you're building out new skill sets for the young people there or whoever it is. So yeah, I love that example, and thanks so much for sharing, and hopefully the next project goes just as well, and yeah, we can get you back on to talk about that when you're done.
Absolutely.
Love it. So we're talking about, I guess, smart communities, and you've come with tech, and we're talking about women in STEM. What are some of the bigger issues that you see, or for women choosing STEM? You obviously talk to a lot of young people, and when you go through these programs, what are the things that they're saying initially, but then after, maybe they go through a program and realize that actually I could do this? What are those mindset shifts that you see?
I think there's a variety of different starting points. Some of them are the second they hear it's tech, they're like, no, absolutely not. Not for me. No, thank you. Disinterest. Some of them are like, oh, I don't know. I've heard that's really tricky. We'll see how I go, but I'm nervous to try. And then some of them are pretty open to whatever you throw in front of them. I kind of prefer or enjoy the ones who have the most room for surprise and delight in the process. So even though some of the stellar students, you can tell from the beginning, they are going to be interested in it, and thus they're going to commit and see the results. I really like surprising the students who didn't think that they would be any good at it. I've been going on a bit of this personal journey myself as an adult, where I think we expect to be perfect at something the first time we try it, because we're adults now. I just get to be good at stuff the second I do them. And that's not the case, and it never has been. But with these girls, I think they're quite closed off to the idea, and those stereotypes are very prevalent. I know that a lot of it is related to maths. There's a lot of documented research about perceived maths ability and confidence. And when technology is presented as this inherently mathematical process, it means those two things can converge in a way that is detrimental to women and other minorities who are susceptible to feeling left out. And I guess that the results, when they're at the end and they actually have this thing that they made, it's kind of impossible to tell me that you don't know what you're doing, because everything that went into the process of creating was a new and learned skill. So the thing that, whether it's something you're holding or something you're showing on a screen, is so far from where they were at the beginning that it's one of these irrefutable facts in a way. You're like, no, look at it. You made it. This thing, it's like it exists now because you learned something. So that's great. And a way to make that happen, I suppose, which really gets the buy-in, is an allowance for the creative flexibility. So I can sit everybody down and say, hey, we're going to code a game today. But if you get to choose, I'm going to make a soccer game, or I'm going to make an under the sea game, or I'm going to make a Polly Pocket game. I don't know. That's a really 90s reference of me. But, I get to choose what it looks like and how it behaves. The underlying structure of the code, the features that you implement, they're going to be the same. But when you create a sense of ownership over the work through differentiation, it means they feel really proud and committed to what they're making. So, yeah, those are definitely some attitude shifts that we can see.
And I think I like creative flexibility is a great term. And I think it's similar in our smart communities as well. There's not like a one size fits all. Yes, there's standards and data and all those type of things behind it. But at the end of the day, you want it to suit your community. You don't want to be something else or something that doesn't quite fit with you. So I think that's really important too. But then also, if you can have that creative flexibility, you can try new things. You can, and if it doesn't, you've got your base there, but you can shift and change. And I think that is also really important too, as we move forward in this space, because we don't have the answers for everything, right? And But also just bringing people into that conversation to know that they can do it to start with, and, it's okay to not know what we're doing. I also have that, I thought, I'll study a master's and I'll know. Not that I even consciously thought that I would know how to do it, but just going through that process of learning again, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think that's really key. And we'll continue to do that as new technologies come out, as new processes come out, and we'll want to use them in our day-to-day lives. So we do that all the time. And I think young people these days are more equipped to be able to do that because they adapt really quickly to new things that are coming out and work out what's useful and what's not pretty quickly too, most likely, and for what they want to do with it too, because they'll use it as a tool rather than try or do everything at once. So I think that's important too, because that's, again, making the analogy to smart communities. We want to be using technology as a tool rather than it driving what we're actually doing.
Precisely. I mean, I say to them all the time, I actually don't need you to love this, and I don't need you to go and be a software engineer or a mechatronics engineer. I actually just need you to try it, and then you can tell me if you like it or not. Everything else, for some reason, sport, instruments, languages, they're keen to try, they're keen to give it a go. But when it comes to tech, you come up against this real barrier. And I don't need you to be an expert. I don't need you to be amazing at it. I don't even need you to like it. I just need you to have tried it in order to tell me how you feel about it, because that is what is going to be stopping you from feeling in the future like you missed the boat, on some opportunity. When was everybody else doing that? I was busy doing X, Y, Z, And as you say, with these learning experiences, the students might think they're sitting there learning how to code in JavaScript, when actually what they're learning how to do is learn something new. So there are always these multiple levels of abstraction in education where you're like, yeah, you're sitting doing this task, but the thing I'm trying to teach you is actually one level above that, one level above the specifics. Yes, you'll have this new skill now, but you'll also have practiced learning, and you'll have practiced failing, and you'll have practiced not knowing what you're doing and searching for the answers, right? So these are the skills that we're trying to give them, not necessarily, all the coding and the languages, that's just a cherry on top. And I'm sure you could affect the same outcomes through teaching different things. But in technology, it's really a process of constantly learning new things. As you say, the landscape changes, the tech moves on, new frameworks come out. The only way to be able to stay on top is to be a quick and effective learner.
And then use the skills that we have, or develop, new ones to adapt to the situation that is in front of us. So it's problem solving, right? It's all of those things. It's not necessarily that, we need to get a new role description, or, okay, now this is the thing that I'm doing today. I've got these skill sets. How else can I apply them to different problems, to solve different problems? Or, this is my base level. Maybe I'll just learn this thing to be able to do X, Y, Z, whatever the case is. And I think we're seeing more and more of that, right? Because you don't have to, I'm an engineer by background, so are you, but, the people I work with are planners, they're economists, they've done an arts degree, whatever the case is, but then they've jumped into the smart community space because they can see it's about community and solving problems and using the things that are available or just over the horizon, and new ways of thinking as well, which is always fun and exciting.
Absolutely.
But also, it's still a project at the end of the day. So some of these things are quite mundane, and, we still have to live life. I think that's an important part, like basic project management. But anyway, regardless of that, let's move to the future now. And can you tell us about the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough?
Well, you touched on it a little bit. I think that people are really craving connection and visibility of the impact that they're having in their work. So one of the trends that I've seen, maybe it is being spoken about a little, but not in great detail. This yearning for meaning. I think that when COVID hit and people started having to work from home, you strip back the perks, the commute, the people, the free breakfasts, the chats around with your people in the lifts. You strip it all back and you're left with what you do. and how that affects the world. And I think some people thought they liked their jobs a lot more than they did. So the trend that I'm seeing is just people starting to, I guess, admit to themselves what makes them tick, what makes them get out of bed in the morning, and search for a job where they can combine skills that they have with an impact on the world. You know, it's been a challenging 2 years, and to get out of bed every morning and sit down and do something where either you can't see the impact or you don't vibe with what you're actually doing minute to minute, hour to hour, it can be a big challenge. So I've seen a lot of peers, a lot of people in the community start thinking about what to do next. And I think there was always, at least in my sort of cohort and among my contemporaries, there's this idea that you have the good, stable, well-paying job until you have enough money to do what you really want to do. So you've reduced the risk by increasing your financial stability. But I think that the framing of taking on a job that you really like as a risk is kind of backwards in a way. It's the reason you tell yourself you're not doing it is because it's risky, not the real reason you're not doing it, which is because it's scary. So I think there's been a lot of self-reflection and a lot of confronting how people are spending their time and how they'd like to be spending their time.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I resonate with that significantly. I mean, just shifting and changing and realizing, and also thinking that not even having a thought of, oh, I wish I was doing something else, because it was, no, this is what you do. And I mean, I've always been a little bit different, but I still fell into a lot of the same things of, you know, you do your degree, you get your job, it's a good job, so you keep the job, you get married and have kids and do the thing and stuff. And, you know, I was on some path like that at one point, and then I was like, oh God, no thank you. Not for me. For a lot of people, it works and that's what they want to do, and that's awesome if you work that out. But for me, and I know particularly in the Smart Community Space, it's very talk about technical stuff, we talk about this, that, and the other, but it all weaves into our lives, and work weaves into our lives. And I think we tried to keep them separate, and then we talked about work-life balance, but then we talked about work-life integration, and now we're talking about our work bringing purpose in our lives, and vice versa, bring our lives into our work and having that really kind of meaningful, I guess, experience overall. And we haven't, I don't think we'll ever get it 100% right, and we'll shift and change and we'll move, and things will be really important for that chapter of our lives as well. Like, I think there's lots of chapters and it works. And then moving on to the next chapter when we're ready to close that, or we think we are. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you just got to take a jump as well. But I do think, I agree. I think, we talk about the great resignation, but actually I think people are shifting. It's not necessarily they're quitting and leaving. I mean, they might leave that job, but we are searching for something different. And I think it's possible once you've done a lot of that, like a lot of working out what you want to do for work is a lot of personal inner work, right? And I think that's probably something that doesn't get talked about enough. But when you start working in something that you really love, or maybe it's a hobby, then if you can intersect that in what you do, I think is key. And going back to what we're talking about very like at the beginning was, you don't have to do just one thing, and that's one thing at a time as well. You can try different things at the same time. And I think technology has a hand in allowing us to do that as well, because we can be more effective, more efficient, but we can also buy back our leisure time to be able to do things that we want to do if we let ourselves, of course. Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, the reason I think that people are looking to their jobs for purpose, especially during COVID, was because nothing else was available to us to find purpose and meaning. Or sorry, I should say very little, right? There were so many things that were stripped back, and all you were left with was what you had to do during the week. So as the world opens up again, and as we find ourselves having more varied experiences available to us, maybe again, jobs don't need to be what fulfills you. And that's totally fine as well. Yeah,
agreed. And everyone had their own different experiences. I think, people did, they reflected on family, and they reflected on all these other things depending on what their circumstances were. And it was a time for reflection. I mean, obviously an awful time for a very large percentage of the population, but also then moving out of it, a time to reflect on what it was that we were doing before, what it was we're doing during, we didn't think the during would be quite as long, I don't think, originally, but during, and then what are we going to take from that to move on further as well?
For sure.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that. I think like sometimes we get caught in emerging trends of technology and things like that, but all of this, it all feeds into smart communities, how we move forward in the future, which is really key. Well, Hannah, it's been so great to chat with you. I feel like we could talk for a long time, but I do realise we are over time and, it's nearly 4 p.m. here, nearly 5 p.m. for you, I think, and we'll have to wrap up there. But one more question, which is, how can people connect with you?
People can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Hannah Beder, Beder. Send me a little message, a note, and we'll connect there for sure. Otherwise, my Instagram is mostly just me knitting, so nothing exciting to see there. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, if you've got specific questions, I'm sure Zoe can also put us in touch directly.
Sure can, and we'll put all the links in the show notes so people can click away and find you and your knitting. And thank you, Hannah, for coming on to the podcast. It was such a great conversation, and hopefully we can catch up soon when I'm in Sydney and, we can have a chat in real life.
I'd love that. Thank you for having me.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC, or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC, and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.